My name is Mikayla. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm really excited to start this presentation today. So, first off, what is Sunrise? So, we are a movement to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process. We unite to make climate change an urgent priority across America and end the corrupting influence of fossil fuel executives on our politics, and elect leaders who stand up for the health and well-being of all people. It's important to note that while Sunrise is fighting climate change, fossil fuel executives and their other very rich, very influential accomplices have corrupted the system in which we live. So when we fight for climate justice, we also mean fighting for housing justice, economic justice, and just the rights of everyone to have a good job and a livable future. And no, Sunrise is a youth org, but that means folks 12 to 35, and we love support from our young at heart folks. Three things. Climate change is intensifying, and we see that every year with the escalation of natural disasters, fires, hurricanes, droughts, etc. But we are finally talking about real solutions. And with the last Democratic primaries, climate justice made its way to the main stage. So the opposition remains strong even across party lines, and to address climate change at the scale necessary to protect people. That's why there was a sit-in at Nancy Pelosi's office. So Democrats created these plans for their version of climate justice, but unfortunately, it's not enough at the scale we need to protect people and their livelihoods. As long as the current political establishment is in power, we will not be able to win at the level and scale of change that we need. So with our next slide, we're going to talk about what do we need to succeed. And Sunrise has a theory of change, and it has three parts. So our first part is political power, and that's a critical mass of enthusiastically supportive public officials. And that's why Jamal Bowman's on that last slide. When Sunrise endorses a candidate, we throw down because we believe in the future that they are fighting for. We don't just say that they have an excellent climate justice plan, we want them to win. Nope, we look at what they want for their communities and what kind of change they want to bring and who they want to uplift. So locally in Sacramento, we endorsed Katie Valenzuela for a city council member, District 4. And so political power is at every level: city council, board of supervisors, House of Reps, Senate, governor, etc. And so the next part of that is our people power. And that's a large, vocal, active base of public support. And we don't just mean our 300 plus hubs across the US, it's public support, so no membership is required. And the third one is people's alignment, as you can see right here. And that's over the next 4 to 10 years, we'll work alongside other movements to build a strong enough force to govern this country. So earlier when I talked about how Sunrise isn't just a climate justice org, this is how we are aligning with housing justice orgs, racial justice orgs, other climate orgs, labor rights, and all that. And so we're going to dig a little deeper. And so yeah, people, dignity, justice, equality for all people, and the use of strong government action to protect the common good. So, and the really good example of this is the current movement for Black Lives. And we think this means there's opportunity for new alignment to gain dominance because so many people want something different. Who will win in this contest will be up to us, and it depends on our ability to fight and to win. So these are kind of the groups and movements that are in the people's alignment. Not all groups, organizations, some of them, they're not all in a particular movement, but they do have shared values. And so as you can see, I kind of like to think of the triangles as everyone's kind of values going to an upward motion of like what that change is going to look like. And so we have like climate activists, Move with Black Lives, for racial justice, workers' rights, and all these different orgs and people like working together. So I think with that, I'm actually going to pass it on over to Shea.
Hey y'all, so my name is Shea Dlott. I'm a fundraiser and an organizer in Sacramento, California. I am also in the Sunrise Sacramento hub, and there's my contact information if anyone wants to reach out to me in a couple of questions. But one of the things that, as we're thinking about like long-term organizing and youth organizing, especially in places that are not our own, like organizing in other states. So there's a couple of key questions that we want people to think about as you're out there organizing. So one of the key things that I'm sure a lot of us are really concentrated on is 2020. Definitely, absolutely, it's a huge thing. But our organizing needs to go beyond a single election day because our issues don't November 3rd. We still have problems and we still have issues to tackle. Climate change won't magically be solved come November 3rd. So I'd like you guys to think about a lot about what organization that you're going out there with and what it's done to earn the votes of the people you're out there talking to. One of the other things that's really important, it's kind of on the other side, is what are you doing to support the people that you're organizing? If you're part of, one of the organizations that's like trying to digitally organize in, say, Arizona or Florida or Pennsylvania, what are you doing to support those people who are living out there and living through a lot of these issues that we may not see in California? Or vice versa, if you're organizing here in California in your own cities, what are you doing to support the people who are living through these issues every single day? And the last one is, what does solidarity look like? What does it look like, not just between you and the person next to you, but between your org and the orgs that you work with? How does it look like when you're really working with someone to get stuff done? So when we're actually thinking about these three questions, I wanted to share a personal story because I've been organizing and canvassing for quite some time. And I kind of wanted to share an experience that's what happens when you go out organizing in places that you're unfamiliar, where you don't think about these three questions in the slightest, where you don't take them into account. So back in 2016, I was an issue-based fundraiser and canvasser. So I worked around preventing hate crimes and fundraising for legal help. And I was deeply afraid about the rise of Trump and Trumpism, as I'm sure many of you are concerned right now. Now, I jumped at the chance back in 2016 to work on the election. I couldn't think of anything more important. And so that meant I was sent from Sacramento to run a door-to-door canvass in Connecticut. I had never been on the East Coast before. I had certainly never been in Connecticut. And we had a goal to hit of 426 canvassing shifts to fill in just 6 days before the primary. Now, I was sent specifically to a city called Bridgeport, which is a predominantly Black city. And I needed to hire as many people as possible. So I reached out to existing volunteers, maybe expected 10 people to show. And after getting a list of active volunteers and sitting down to call them in a Dunkin' Donuts, I expected maybe 10 people to show up. I am not kidding you. 20 minutes into calling this list, 40 to 60 older Black women showed up at that Dunkin' Donuts, exactly where I was, in walking shoes, with clipboards, ready to canvass. Now, while I had run canvasses before, for this, I was so deeply unprepared. I didn't know the neighborhoods I was working in. I didn't have nearly enough supplies to hire all these people who showed up, or turf even, or, anything that they needed, pens much less. And I didn't know where they had canvassed before. I just, at the deep part of it, I didn't know what I was doing there. And that's when one of the volunteers, Ms. Foster, took charge. She made copies of new hire paperwork, made sure everyone had what they needed. She knew the most reliable canvassers. She knew who to send in pairs. She knew every neighborhood. She fixed every walk list. And she even gave me a place to sleep when I had pulled all-nighter after all-nighter to make sure everything got done on my side. But they had been doing the work long before I had ever come out to Bridgeport, Connecticut. But I was being paid nearly double what they were being paid. Now, we won that primary, and that was very exciting. But when it came to the end, they kept asking, what are we going to do to celebrate? And I didn't know the answer at the time because I had never worked on any campaign that had an end date. And when I called my regional director to ask, she said, why would we do that for them? Why would we spend money on that? And I knew something was deeply wrong with that answer, but I didn't know what to do about that, or much less to tell these 40 Black women that we planned on doing nothing. So I said nothing. I avoided the question every time it came up. And in the end, I didn't even give them my number or email address because my regional director didn't want anyone contacting us after the election. So we left them with paychecks on the desk and we never saw them again. Now, we may have won that primary, but now we need to go back because elections keep coming over and over again. But how could we canvass in that neighborhood again? I know I can't reach out to Ms. Foster again, not after that. So we need to really think long-term about how we're interacting in the places that we're organizing, because this doesn't have an end date, and neither do the issues they're living with. are the issues we're living with.
So I just wanted to go back a little bit to that question of what solidarity looks like. That's kind of an open-ended question. It's not something that we have the answer to, because it's not something that there is the answer for. It's something that it's an iterative process. It requires constant learning and growing, and there's no achieving equitable organizing. It's something that you continually work towards. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the work that I help Sunrise do in digital organizing, kind of going back to that question of youth outreach and how we can show up for our community. And one of the ways we do that is in creating community resources. And part of the goal of that is we have experience, we have knowledge about some of these government processes because we work in them, and we work to target them. And so we want to distribute our knowledge and demystify and make participating in electoral processes accessible. So this is a guide that we actually made. We obviously focus on the city of Sacramento because we're Sunrise Sacramento. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is really make public comment at city council meetings as accessible as possible. And we wanted to make sure that everyone in our community felt empowered to do so. Part of why I'm showing this is because of the response that we got to this document. We had less than 200 likes on that post, but we got over 200 shares. And so it really showcases how many people felt like this was useful and felt like it was empowering to them. And people specifically reached out to us saying, thank you so much for sharing this, for demystifying this process. We were never taught any of these skills in school. City councils and other local electoral processes are things that we never were taught about in any way, shape, or form. And so having that broken down for us, having that presented to us in a shareable format and made as accessible as possible was really empowering. And this is another Instagram post that we did on the note of making sure that the things we share aren't just informational, but also actionable. And so associated with this, and Sarah put it in the chat, we have always a link in our bio. On our Instagram bio, you can have a link that people can click on. And so when they see this, tool, they can then directly go to click on our account profile, click on the link, and then it takes them to a way to actually take action. And so we set up these digital tools using software that we have, like Action Network, through other means, and create pathways for people to directly take action locally. Part of that is us on the back end doing research, making sure that we go into those city council agendas, pull out the comment links, pull out other actionable links so that people can, while scrolling on social media, just click this, click that, and then they're done. It only takes a few seconds, and we want to make it as accessible as possible. And so part of continuing in organizing is we feel that community organizing and empowering people in our community and in building skills is a really powerful base to get electoral wins. When you empower people to engage in political, governmental, and electoral processes that historically are inaccessible, you build those skills, you build that confidence and feel empowered. And that kind of, in our experience, has been where we found success.
Hello, I'm back, and we're going to talk about solidarity and what kind of we've been doing as a hub. And thank you both Moiz and Shea for touching on those very important topics. So first, solidarity looks like basing all of your actions in JEDI or JO. And JEDI, for all you Padawans out there, stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And JO stands for Justice, Equity, and Anti-Oppression. And these practices are looking around the room and asking, who is here? Who should be here? What stands in the way for folks who aren't here at the moment? Who is taking up more space, less space, especially when we are in coalition spaces or spaces where we're meeting community members. And when we're building solidarity with other organizations, it's coming out to show support, whether that be on the ground at an action, uplifting their causes and needs, asking what they need, where you can. It looks like creating relationships, not just partnerships. Relationships are long lasting. Partnerships last as long as the project or collaborative effort is over. It looks like being intentional rather than transactional. And so the way we're doing that is with these little care packages. I'm showing it like it's on the screen, but it's actually up there. And so all that being said, we as a hub, we aren't perfect. When you look up solidarity in the dictionary, our picture isn't going to be right next to it. And honestly, I don't think anyone is going to be. There is always more to learn and unpack, and we're working on getting better and doing better, but we don't have the answer, as Moiz said, because there is no the answer. What I said previously are some ways that we are bringing solidarity to our hub, but also to the spaces that we take up. And one way that we are working on solidarity efforts is to support. And that is one of the best ways to show solidarity to other orgs and individuals. And one way we're doing that is with our care package program. And these cute little bundles of care packages were made for an organization doing a lot of great work on the ground for the movement for Black lives. And so what we're trying to do is use our platform to raise funds and resources for other organizations, amplify and support other individuals and organizations in our community. We asked our community and our networks on social media for donations, and we said we're creating the care packages for folks on the ground, organizing, leading marches, rallies, protests for the movement for Black lives, and then we wanted to give back. And we asked for cash donations and physical donations, and the community came through. And it's a great way to get folks involved in that starting level, because maybe they're not all the way ready to go full throttle in, but this is like steps that community members, especially youth, can take part in to help build in these solidarity efforts. So we support our community and the people in it, and especially when we don't quite know where we fit in this current moment as a hub, this is the way to do it, get the ground running. And when we're giving these care packages, we're not giving them in the sense of like, hey, we gave this care package, sign our petition, join our task force. These are like legitimately just ways to support. So when you don't know exactly how to give in the moment, support is the best way. And so another way was joining the People's Budget Sacramento group. And it consists of folks from different organizations, some community members, all coming together to advocate for their city. The foundational principle of the People's Budget is simple. Residents deserve more of a voice in how our money is spent, and budget spending should reflect community needs and priorities. The goal is to create a community budget proposal in time for the Sacramento County September 2020 budget hearing and the city's mid-year budget review. So this is a budding people's alignment right here. And this is a movement of genuine solidarity. And sometimes there are places to grow. And still, it's all of our responsibility to bring awareness to those moments that need growth and advocate for that change. So that's what our hub is doing. And like we said earlier, there are so many more ways to build solidarity, but it's a growing process. And hand it on back over to Moiz.
Hi again, everyone. I realized I didn't introduce myself earlier. Moiz, I go by he, him pronouns, and I'm an organizer in Sacramento with Sunrise. And so kind of going back again to reflecting on that question, what does solidarity actually look like in practice in your community? These are kind of just some further rhetorical questions for introspection. Are you sharing your digital and financial resources as an organization? Are you focused on building relationships, or are you engaging transactionally? Are you using your platform to amplify marginalized voices and to support other organizations that don't have the access to resources that you do? Do you pay your own staff a living wage? How can you address harmful norms and behaviors within your organization? And so this is kind of just a primer. We all operate within society, and society has conditioned all of us to have internalized norms, internalized patterns of behavior that are harmful, even in spaces that are entirely led by people of color, even in progressive spaces. And so we wanted to quickly cover a few of those behaviors and how they can be harmful in organizing spaces, and how they can ultimately be harmful because they prioritize the status quo, prioritize what's being done, whatever's being loudest, and they work to consolidate power. And so again, these are those internalized norms that weaken our movements when we find them operating and present within our spaces. And so this is kind of just a list that we've adapted from Showing Up for Racial Justice's website. And so I'll just quickly touch on them. Perfectionism, sense of urgency, defensiveness, quantity over quality, the idea of objectivity as though it's something that can be achieved, when in reality it's something that can't be achieved, fear of open conflict, worship of the written word. So often we have an agenda, and when the reality of the situation deviates from our agenda, we have to reconcile with that, and we have to adapt. And then power hoarding and the right to comfort. And so we wanted to conclude on, again, that final question: what will your organization do to earn votes? And we wanted to, again, reflect on the kind of the point that getting people involved in electoral politics doesn't always look like asking for their votes. We have to invest in our communities and in leadership.
So we do have a couple minutes for questions if anyone wants to put them in the chat. A great question from Ruth, if anybody wants to answer it. Sorry, I'll read it. It was, older demographic groups can work with younger demographic groups.
Demographic groups are huge, especially older versus younger. Like that's half the population in that way. So I think you might want to kind of break it down a little bit further of how do I work with this particular group in front of me. So there's a lot of different youth organizations. So Sunrise is a really obvious one, as we are here from Sunrise, but there's also some other ones that are based around, like the Movement for Black Lives, or there's other like youth organizations like Young Dems is one that I hear about a lot. And it really depends on who you're interacting with to base how better to organize with them. And honestly, I like to take the motto of meet people where they're at when you're organizing. So if the group that you're organizing works a lot on social media, it might be time to, take a couple of YouTube videos and learn about social media. If they're working through Slack, it might be showing up to their meetings and asking for permission to join it. Everyone works differently. You have to kind of not look at, if you're trying to organize with like a demographic, of don't look at the big broad thing, look at kind of where you're working specifically and take measures to organize there. Because there's no beautiful answer of like, this will work with anyone under 25. We're all different.
I see a question from Kelly that's pinned to, what are the best resources during the pandemic to reach the youth? Which platform is most popular? I feel like that's also, we're all different thing. There's so many different platforms. I know someone had mentioned in the chat earlier about TikTok, and that's something some people are on, some people are on Facebook, some people are on Instagram. One thing, I volunteered with the Jamal Bowman campaign, which Sunrise was working on a lot. And one method we used was on Facebook. We would look through groups in the area and see people that had posted in support of Jamal or in support of issues that Jamal supported, and then reach out to them and message them and see if they wanted to help with the campaign or help them find a way to vote. So that's one example of using Facebook, but a lot of folks are on Instagram, Twitter. There's so many different platforms.
Wanted to highlight what Libby said. Libby Higgins said in response to Ruth's question as well. So instead of trying to bring young people to your events, ask your group to join their events and support their phone banks or efforts. That's the best way to build trust. And I 100% agree. And I think like Shea said, meeting people where they're at. So that is a great way to, in fact, do that. So just wanted to highlight that as well in the chat.
Jennifer had a question about what electoral work we're doing for Democratic candidates and youth mobilization online. Does someone want to speak to that?
I can a little bit. So each hub has got different priorities and going to tackle how they work in the election differently, if at all. So I'm going to speak mostly from our experience here in Sacramento, is that we wanted to pick local candidates who would have the most impact on the issues that we set as priority, which was environmental justice, housing, racial justice, labor rights, and building the movement. And various, orgs over Sunrise hubs over the country, I imagine, have very similar priorities. But the way we pick candidates isn't necessarily are they a Democrat? It's mostly like, are they going to help build the movement? Because when it comes to Democrats, there is a wide range of people who fit under that umbrella.
Looks like Margaret had a quick question as well. Just asked if we can share stories. Ooh, chat's going so fast about the internalized norms you've described. And I think the one that comes up the most for me is sense of urgency. When we have a sense of urgency surrounding projects or campaigns we're doing, we tend to bulldozer over voices that usually don't get the chance to be heard, whether that be because folks are either like, maybe they have a really busy work schedule, maybe they're in school, maybe they're caring for their children, maybe they're live, like, because when we think about organizing, it's usually up to the folks who have the most free time and resources and abilities to do so. And so when we have this urgency of we need to do it right now, we don't really get to include those voices. And to kind of sit on these ideas doesn't really get to manifest because we're just like, we need to get this finish line now. And when we do that, we're recreating these same systems that have kept us oppressed in the first place. So that's just one thing I've seen come up in different organization spaces that I've been a part of.
I think that's the end of our time, but thank you again, everybody, for joining us, and feel free to email us with any questions, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the day.